In your 14 years before you came, have you encountered a lot of discrimination against women in the advertising profession?
Well, it's a lot less now than it was then.
It is.
Yeah.
What forms of discrimination? Salary or?
Well, salary, and also the automatic question used to be, if you went in and asked for an advertising job, was, can you write? And I think this is because women were sort of closet cases. You know, if they could keep you in the back room and not admit to anyone that it was a young girl pounding out the advertising, so much the better. I think they are.
And how did you get your big break? I know you started out as a writer-producer.
Well, it's kind of, I guess by accident. If they didn't have someone else to send to get the information to write the commercials, and they'd say, well, you can go this time and talk to the client and find out what the client wants. And then I would come back and write it up, and that became more convenient, and after all, that was a saving in, you know, pardon the expression, manpower. And so I would go out and I would talk to the clients, and then the clients got used to me, you know, and they didn't mind so much. And then they got to like me. I guess a good example of this is when I was calling on skill rooms. And I used to go out there for Bloom Advertising. Is it okay to mention these names?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Well, I was doing the commercials for that, and I called on them. And when I first started going out there, you know, it was sort of, well, not really a put down, but it was, you know, not really enthusiastic either. And after a while, I kind of got to be Helen. And then one time I got sick, and I was out for about 2 weeks. And when I came back, well, I was sweetheart. And then I went on my vacation. And when I came back from that, I'd been promoted to daughter. And I really felt like that I had, you know, made good progress with them, at least emotionally, you know, and it was a lot easier to work with them. And what happens is a sort of a metamorphosis in attitude, too. A client will get used to you, and then they'll get to like you, and then they get very defensive about you. And then just let anybody try to say anything about, you know, their lady account executive, and they get very upset about it. And they'll defend you.
Really.
Yeah, it is. And I really think it's an individual thing. It's not something you can say, well, this is going to open up for all women. For one thing, a lot of women don't want to be account executives. I think a lot of women don't want to have to make decisions. And most jobs, you're paid on the basis of the number of decisions that you're willing to make and live with. And a lot of women don't want to. I think this is probably part of the pressure of our society.
Do you think part of it goes back to the image of women, the woman's self-image, or the traditional role of a woman?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I really think that probably the best asset a girl can have is a father who thinks she has good sense. I really do.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah.
Because if a father treats his little girl as a baby doll from the time she's teeny, you know, and he says, well, you don't have to worry about that, sweetheart, and he doesn't discuss politics, for instance, with her. He doesn't involve her in what he's doing. She really doesn't know anything about what he does. She automatically concludes that that part of her family's life is verboten, that it's not a part of her life, nor does she have any chance to participate in it. I was personally very fortunate.
Now, let me ask you, your co-workers,
Yeah.
do you meet resistance from the men, or from the women, or from both?
Both.
Both.
Both. Young men, not nearly as much. Oh, no, young men are, and I'm saying the under 30 young men, they are much more inclined to think of women as people, you know, and not as girls, ladies, broads, whatever category you want to give it. And they're much more inclined to expect you to have good sense. I don't know exactly how this came about. You know, I think it's probably just a reaction of their type of tolerance of people, you know, in general. I mean, you don't have to be categorized in order to be acceptable. You know, I mean, they don't think, okay. And another thing, they don't expect that if you're going to have intelligence, that automatically equates with ugly. You know, whereas older men, you know, when they run into you doing something, you know, will say, well, you're a sweet little thing. What are you doing here? You know, well, you know, sweet little thing just doesn't cut it. And I don't think women have to choose anymore. You don't have to choose, well, I'm going to be a mother, or I'm going to be an account executive, you know. You don't have to make it. You have more options now.
What are your husband's attitudes towards your career? I guess he must be all for it.
Yes, he likes for me to work. And it's really interesting, and really he provides a sounding board for me, and I provide one for him. And we find that this is a real good thing for both of us. And he would not like me to be home. For one thing, I'd be, you know, climbing the walls.
Right.
I'd last 2 weeks, and they'd have to take me to Terrell. But more than that, I think he sees me as a person and not just as his wife. And of course, this is an important image factor. I think a lot of men marry someone they think of as a person, and then they immediately turn her into their wife. You know, and she's supposed to be do a certain thing. And that's sad.
Now, have the attitudes here at Tracy-Locke changed since you've been hired in prison?
But most agencies, when they're going to look for an account executive, automatically look for men. And that's because there are more of them. You know, there are more men account executives. And I think the attitude here in Texas is a little bit different than the attitude in New York or Chicago too. We're not quite as ready down here. There's still the frontier gallantry, you know, sort of women folk don't do that kind of an attitude.
You told me a wonderful story about Mr. Height, who's the president, I guess, of Tracy-Locke. His acceptance, gradual acceptance, and how you knew he really is.
He's done very well, but of course Mr. Height has something going for him, and that's a real bright wife. His wife is just a tremendous person, and she's very active in a number of things, and so he's got a head start on a lot of men right there, you know, in that his wife does not sit back and play dumb. She's smart, and she doesn't mind showing it. So this is a help to all of us here. And but one day he did take me over to the City Club to have lunch, and we were going to discuss a prospective client. And we went up there, and we just started into the dining room, and the head waiter came running up, and he said, "Oh, no, Mr. Height, no, you know, you can't go in here." And Morris said, "Well, you know, what's wrong?" And he said, "Well, you have a lady with you." And Morris looked at me, and I know he was thinking, "Who, him?" You know? And it was really a nice feeling, because we were talking, you know, man to man, as it were, and it had never occurred to him that I wasn't acceptable anywhere. And I think, you know, City Club is going to have to change, along with some of these other places that do this.
Well, what do you think about women's liberation? Do you think that's an effective way to combat the problem?
No. No. I don't. I'm really not that keen on working with a big group of women. You know, I like women. Okay, you know. I mean, I have women friends, but I really prefer working with men. You know, this is a prejudice. I guess I'm biased in some way. Can't quite explain it. For one thing, I really just don't like militants of any sort. They make me uncomfortable. You know, I guess I am kind of a comfortably isolated wasp. You know? And this is the kind of life I've always lived. And people that want to get out and burn bras and, you know, throw open their shirts and march and, you know, burn things in effigy and all of this sort of thing, make me uncomfortable. You know, they really do, because I think that if you have all that energy, you know, instead of devoting it to knocking things, you ought to be devoting it to building something. And if they've got some suggestions about specific things to do that are good things, like, for instance, on the abortion laws, working with state legislatures to change those, and I say, you know, sure, fine, go, that's great. I do think a lot of attitudes that have kept women from being a full person potentially are bad. And I have to say, though, that I think they're going about it in entirely the wrong way. A lot of the women involved in this movement obviously don't like men, and you know, they may have a problem in being a latent homosexual or something like that, and this is a good outlet. You know, if they're going to start an undercover movement, you know, and this is a terrible pun, start with a marriage bed.